In a dreamlike land, a girl gives a boy a pendant with a lock on it and keeps the key to herself. They both promise that when they will meet in the future, they will open the lock to check what's inside, and they will then get married. In the present, Raku, who has all the expertise of Gordon or Masae, makes breakfast for a group of ugly-looking thugs. Even though he's the family heir, he reminds the goons that he's never going to become a yakuza. Instead, his aim is to become a corporate slave by becoming a civil servant after passing from a top university. His dad also joins them and reminds Raku that he wants to have a serious talk with him soon. The yakuza guards drop him off at school, and he thinks about how he never got the chance to have a girlfriend in all this mess. He also recalls the promise he made to a girl in his childhood, and just then, a blonde babe jumps over the school wall and knees him in the face. She then runs away since she's in a hurry, leaving him behind in a slum. Raku then heads to his class where his friends Onodera and Shu fuss over his wounds, and Onodera even puts a band-aid over his nose, which makes him feel better. Their class begins, and the teacher introduces a new transfer student. The same babe from before walks in and introduces herself as Kirisaki Chitoge. She tells everyone that she has moved from America and that she's biracial since her dad is an American. While everyone fusses over her, Raku calls her out as a barbarian, and she calls him a wimp for crying over a small boo-boo. They both argue, and Raku even calls her a money girl, which earns him a kick to the face from Chitoge. The teacher seats them both together, and during class, Raku realizes that he lost his pendant at the time when Chitoge meet his face. He asks Chitoge to help him look for a pendant, and in exchange, she asks him to never talk to her in the school. Onodera also offers to help in his search, and when Raku informs her about the pendant, she seems surprised to hear about it. Then teacher then assigns Raku to be Chitoge's partner in taking care of the school pets, which annoys them both. They both somehow tend to the school pets while arguing with each other all the time. At class, Raku notices that Chitoge is struggling to take notes in Japanese, so he offers her his notes, but she tells him not to talk to her. Afterwards, during sports class, the others fangirl over Chitoge while Raku calls her a monkey, so she throws a dumbbell at him and tries to beat him up. Onodera then gives another band-aid to him since she's Mother Teresa and asks him about his pendant, so he tells her that he treasures it a lot since he made a promise to a girl 10 years ago. Later, he searches for the pendant with Chitoge, and she reveals that she transferred to the school because of her parents' work. When he inquires about her parents' work, she starts acting sus and dodges the question left and right. As time passes, the gangsters' fights begin escalating a lot in the streets. Meanwhile, Raku still cannot find his pendant. One time, Chitoge yells at him that he should forget the pendant since the girl who gifted him must have forgotten about it too. She calls him unmanly for obsessing over something so trivial and yells at her to get lost. After that, he keeps searching for the pendant himself while Chitoge just ignores him. One day, Chitoge calls him to a random spot and throws his pendant at him from afar. Onodera then reveals to him that Chitoge had kept searching for his pendant, which makes him realize that she's actually a good person deep inside. He then wonders whether he should forget the promise he made, and Onodera tells him that the other girl may be holding the promise dear to her heart too, so he shouldn't forget the promise. He thanks her for everything, and as he leaves, Onodera takes out a key to match his locket. At his home, Raku's dad tells him that there's going to be a full-blown war between the gangs unless he can help out. He then tells him to date the other gang's boss's daughter, and just then, Chitoge enters the scene. Much to both of their surprise, their parents announce that they are going to fake dating each other for the next 3 years. Raku and Chitoge both argue with their dads that they both cannot possibly go out with each other. A moment later, the Beehive gang members barge in the room and accuse the Yakuza of kidnapping their hair. A top-tier member, Claude, announces to Chitoge that he is here to save her, and the Yakuza thugs also barge in to fight them. Just as things start to get heated up, both the gang leaders announce that Chitoge and Raku are all lovey-dovey with each other, which stops everybody from fighting. Both the gangs announce to support the couple with all their hearts, which makes Raku comment that he'd never date a gorilla girl. Chitoge also argues back, and once again, both the gangs begin bickering with each other. They all ask the wanted lovebirds whether they are actually dating, and seeing the tense environment, Raku takes a U-turn and announces that of course they are both in love with each other. Chitoge also mimics him, and this convinces both the gangs that they are actually a couple. Afterwards, both of them whine about getting forced to become a couple, and Raku reveals that he has never dated anyone. Chitoge reveals the same fact about herself, and he then thanks her for finding the pendant for him. He tells her about the girl he met as a child and the promise they made with each other, which Chitoge finds really romantic. The next day, Chitoge shows up to Raku's house and announces that they are going on a date. The thugs remind them that they should be going on dates like a normal couple does, and they reluctantly head out to prove to them. When they are outside, they notice that the gang members are secretly following them, and Chitoge whines about their situation once again. She tells Raku to take in charge since he is a man, however he doesn't know what to do since he has always lived a pathetic, lonely life. He then recalls his fantasy about going on a date with Onodera, and following this, he takes Chitoge to eat food and then to the movies, but she keeps complaining and throwing fits everywhere. They both decide to watch a movie fit for a couple, but Chitoge falls asleep midway. Afterwards, he goes to buy a soda for her and some wannabe goons to start pestering her to come with them. She keeps ignoring them, but they don't take the hint and still keep hitting on her. Just when she's about to kick their butts, Raku intervenes and takes her away from them. She reminds him that she could have handled them easily, but he tells her to choose her battles wisely and not to stoop down to their level. She then heads to the restroom, and Raku thinks loudly about how he would have preferred to go on a date with Onodera instead. Just then, Onodera arrives near him and tells him that she is heading back home. Meanwhile, Chitoge overhears her gang members talking about their date and that they don't seem to be much in love, so she rushes to Raku's side and calls him her darling. She even tells Onodera that they have just recently begun dating, however Raku keeps denying this. Chitoge then excuses herself and walks away, while Claude, who was stalking them all along like a creep, becomes even more sus of their fake relationship. Raku then tries to tell Onodera that he is not going out with Chitoge, but she instead tells him to stop denying since this will hurt Chitoge's feelings. She begins to leave, so Raku takes out his pendant and asks her whether she has ever seen his pendant as a child. She denies even seeing the pendant and then heads home. Raku then finds Chitoge and gives her a snack as an apology for his earlier lame behavior. She reluctantly accepts his apology, but then proceeds to diss his choice of snack. Back at home, Onodera worries about lying to Raku and wonders how she can ever tell him about the key that she possesses to his pendant. In a dream, small Raku sees a girl crying and questions what's making her cry. She replies that it is because the book she is reading is very sad, so Raku decides to rewrite the ending on it, which makes the girl very happy, and he introduces himself to the girl, but wakes up before the girl can say her own name. Raku is surprised that he saw this after a while again and gets upset about why he couldn't see more of it. He begins making breakfast while thinking about how Onodera was not the girl he made the promise with, and freaks out over how Onodera thinks he is dating Chitoge. On the way to school, he decides to clear up the misunderstanding with Onodera, and Chitoge calls in from across the road looking like she ran the Great Wall. She reveals that she was bombarded with questions after the date, and they discuss how school is the only place they can relax it because no one knows about them dating. Raku mentions how Claude is the only one suspicious of their relationship, and Chitoge reminds him to talk to Onodera before she tells anyone what she saw. They enter the classroom and he goes up to Onodera to talk to her, but they're too late as the guys surround him and question if he is really dating Chitoge. All the guys feel betrayed and the teacher congratulates them too, so Raku tries to clear up the misunderstanding, but they see Claude watching them from the tree, so they begin their Oscar-level acting. They tell the whole class about how they're madly in love, but Raku tries to talk to Onodera, however she congratulates him too. Raku stays depressed till the end as he doesn't get a chance to talk to Onodera, and Chitoge leaves without him after saying that she has something to do. Raku thinks about how he will talk to her and she appears before him. He realizes that it's now or never and steps forward, but thinks about how Onodera might question why Raku is only telling her. He starts getting cold sweats over how Onodera might think of it as a confession, so he ends up joking about how he has no idea how he ended up dating Chitoge. Onodera remarks that Raku is a nice person, that's why Chitoge must have liked him, and she starts stating all the good things he does. Raku is shocked that Onodera notices what he does so much, and just then, someone bumps into Onodera and a key falls out of her bag. He realizes that it looks like a key that would fit in his pendant, and Onodera crashes out with embarrassment, saying that it's the key to her room before running away. Raku wonders if it really was a key to a bookcase. Meanwhile, Onodera is standing all flustered around the corner. Raku and Chitoge continue their lovey-dovey act the next day in front of the class because Claude is still keeping an eye on them. They take a breather on the roof and Chitoge reveals that Claude later so they can rest. Raku questions if they can reveal their situation to a close friend, which pisses her off, and she tells him to do whatever he wants before leaving without him. Raku goes to Shu and reveals how Chitoge is mad at him, so Shu points out that she's probably pissed because she does not have friends. Raku goes off to look for Onodera to clear up the misunderstanding, but the teacher tells her that Onodera left early, and Raku thinks about what Shu said. He realizes that Chitoge wasn't able to bond with anyone except him since the start, so he runs to the class and sees her making plans on how to start a conversation with the girls in class. He walks up to her, and she hides the notebook all flustered up. She talks about how it has always been very hard for her to make friends since the start due to Claude, and Raku consoles her by saying that he used to make notebooks like her too, because his father was a gangster too, so he knows how she feels. He advises her on how to make friends and says that he could help her with her notebook. She doesn't reject the offer and says that she has no reason to act cute because they're faking it anyways. Onodera overhears this from outside the class as the two are bickering inside. Chitoge slowly starts to become more friendly with her classmates, and Raku realizes that she has been smiling more often too. Onodera watches them interacting from afar and comments that they seem to be really in love, which makes her friend Ruri point out that it's not fair since Onodera herself has a crush on him too. She even reveals that she was convinced Raku had a crush on her too, but Onodera thinks she's just buffing. Ruri then assures her that she can still aim for Raku even if he likes someone else, and then to help her out, she asks Raku and Shu whether they would like to form a study group with them. Later, they all head to Raku's yakuza house for their study group, and Raku notices that Onodera is trying to ignore him. Meanwhile, Chitoge is all excited because a loner like her has never studied in a group. They all enter Raku's room, and once Onodera unintentionally averts her eyes when Raku looks at her. To make up for her awkward behavior, she tries to help him in serving tea to the others, but she ends up accidentally touching his fingers, and this makes them both freak out and drop the tea platter. They all begin studying, and when Onodera asks for Ruri's help to solve a question, Ruri instead asks Raku to help her instead. By this time, Raku can't calm down his pathetic meat, and as Onodera sits near him, he can barely concentrate on his work. Chitoge instead helps out Onodera and reveals that she used to score all as in her previous school, which pisses off Raku. Chitoge then asks Onodera whether she likes anyone currently, and she says she doesn't, which really pleases Raku. Chitoge comments that she also cannot wait to have a romance of her own, and realizing her blunder, she announces that she was just joking. Shu then asks her how far along she's gone with Raku, and before he can utter more nonsense, Raku drags him out. He then comes out clean to him that he is actually pretending to date Chitoge, and Shu reveals that he was already sus about their fake relationship. He then advises him to confess to Onodera to avoid any misunderstanding since she seems to have a crush on him too, but Raku doesn't believe this since he has no aura whatsoever. Meanwhile, the Yakuza thugs decide to bring the couple even closer, so they lure both of them to a storehouse and somehow lock them inside. Raku finds their plan stupid, and just then, Chitoge also closes in on him from behind. Seeing her face, he realizes that despite acting like a gorilla, she is actually afraid of dark, small spaces. Chitoge tells him to deal with the problem, and seeing her up close, he notices that Chitoge is actually a pretty hot babe. He then reminds himself that he has Onodera in his heart, and just then, Chitoge points out a ladder. Since she's too scared to climb the ladders, she suggests that he can go out to find somebody who will open the door, but he instead tells her that he doesn't want to leave her alone in the dark. After acting cool for 2 seconds, Chitoge then asks him to yap about any topic which will distract her. When he doesn't say anything, she instead asks him about his opinion on Onodera, so he starts yapping about her qualities endlessly. Surprisingly, she doesn't realize that he likes her. Instead, she comments about how it's weird people want to know whether they have kissed or not. She tells him she'd rather die than kiss him, and once again they both begin bickering like an old couple for the 1000th time. She then realizes that she doesn't feel very scared now, so she decides to climb the ladder, but somehow she trips and falls on him instead. Just then, Claude barges inside to look for her and discovers them in the intimate position. Onodera also spots them both and rushes off with Ruri when she sees them like this. At home, Chitoge writes down in her diary that Raku may have some redeeming qualities after all. The next day, Raku thinks about how his plans totally failed yesterday, and he even gets flustered while thinking about what happened. He stands outside the class while Onodera talks to Ruri about how it's wrong to go after someone who is already committed. Raku does not understand what she says, but Ruri mentions how Onodera is still keeping the key, waiting for the boy she made the promise with 10 years ago. Raku is shocked after hearing this, and Ruri says that she will find out how he feels about Onodera. She thinks about how Raku likes Onodera and suspects the relationship between him and Chitoge. Later, Ruri invites Chitoge to help out their swimming team practice tomorrow as they're short on members and Chitoge is very athletic. She's happy to help, but Raku wonders why he was called, and Ruri tells him to wait as his help is also needed, but he's still racking his small brain over what he heard before. Onodera also arrives wearing the swimsuit, which makes Raku melt, and he notices the key. She is also embarrassed because she didn't know he was coming, and he wonders why she keeps the key with her at all times. Chitoge calms him down by hitting him for staring at Onodera so much, so they start quarreling. Ruri questions what they were doing inside the storehouse all alone, and Raku answers it was an accident, which gives Onodera a sense of relief. Shu also arrives to bless his eyes, fully excited, but all of his excitement dies down as he looks at Ruri, which pisses her off, so she hits him. She asks the couple to teach Onodera how to swim. Onodera and Raku are very nervous, but Chitoge is glad to help, which makes Onodera think about how Chitoge is such a nice person. Shu offers to rub sunscreen on Chitoge, but Ruri stops his pervertedness from reaching Chitoge. Meanwhile, Claude the stalker gets a nosebleed after seeing Chitoge wearing a swimsuit. Chitoge steps up to give a demonstration to Onodera on how to swim, but her technique is too advanced to help. Raku takes the lead himself and begins teaching her the basics, but the close-up is too much for him as he lets out a nose waterfall. He has a hard time due to her cuteness, and she goes to get him something to drink. He sees the key in her stuff, so he takes out his pendant to test it, but it doesn't enter fully. He takes the key out again, but the girls return at the wrong time and question what he is doing with the key of the girl's locker. Ruri and Chitoge tied him up for being a pervert, without listening to his side of the story, but Onodera says that it must have been a misunderstanding, so they decide to forgive him. Ruri still strongly suspects his and Chitoge's relationship, and the next day, Raku thinks about how they failed to teach Onodera how to swim in a single day. Chitoge roasts him for not being able to teach her properly, and Chitoge notices how nice he is being to Onodera, so she taunts him, which makes them fight again. Ruri thinks about how they can't ever seem to stop fighting and how their lovey-dovey side looks fake. Raku tells Chitoge to warm up properly, but she doesn't listen and jumps straight in and gets a cramp midway. Raku jumps straight in to save her and brings her out, but Shu says that she isn't breathing, so Raku must perform CPR as her boyfriend. He musters up the courage to do it, even though everyone is watching and he is about to do it, but Chitoge wakes up before beating him for trying to kiss her. Later, Onodera and Ruri talk about how dependable he was, and Ruri wonders if Raku and Chitoge are actually dating or not. She sees Onodera with the key and remarks how she should stop thinking about the promise she made 10 years ago, which she doesn't even remember properly. She suggests Onodera to focus on her current love, but Onodera thinks about how her past and current might be connected. Meanwhile, Shu and Raku get beat up by Chitoge because Shu is talking like a pervert. The next day, Chitoge takes out her lunchbox, full of expensive stuff, which makes Onodera question what her family does. Chitoge gets flustered and says that it's a normal family. They decide to call each other by their first names, and Chitoge vents about how Raku ruined everything yesterday, but they tell her how he was the one who saved her from drowning. Chitoge feels guilty for beating him up, and Ruri suggests apologizing to him and thanking him. Chitoge remarks that it's too late to do that now, but they tell her that they will help her do it. Later, Chitoge goes up to him to talk about yesterday, and he tells her not to worry about how Shu called her chubby. He suggests she should watch her diet, which infuriates her, and she ends up hitting him instead of thanking. On the second try, she asks him about his favorite food based on Ruri and Onodera's advice, and she gets him bread, but he remarks that he likes a different flavor, which makes her hit him again. On the third try, she is even able to continue the conversation about yesterday, about they both think about different things. Raku is shocked that Chitoge was happy about him almost doing the CPR, and his heart starts pounding. She gets flustered when she realizes what he is thinking about and ends up hitting him again. She decides to give up, and Ruri directly questions if they're really dating, which reminds Chitoge about how Raku said it was alright to tell close friends. She ends up telling them about how Raku and her are forced to pretend due to a family situation, and Ruri questions if she would be fine if another girl likes Raku. She replies that she will gladly hand him over to that girl before leaving to do something, and Ruri tells Onodera to confess to him before another girl snatches him away. Onodera decides that she will confess but gets embarrassed when she imagines herself doing it. Meanwhile, Raku wonders where the girl from his promise is right now, and he bumps into a few workers, accidentally dropping his pendant, but he doesn't notice. He goes to Chitoge and finally realizes that she was trying to thank him for saving her the whole day. She asks him why he rescued her even though he doesn't like her, and he scolds her for thinking that he needs to like someone to save them. He talks about how it were his instincts and jokes about faking being lovers must be coming into reality, but she doesn't find it funny. She says thank you in English because she is shy and leaves without telling him what he meant, but he manages to realize that she was thanking him. On the way back, she finds his pendant while on the other side. Ruri asks Onodera why she likes Raku, but Onodera doesn't have a proper answer except that he is very sweet. Raku enters the class, so Ruri decides to make the best of the moment and escape so Onodera can confess. Raku notices how Onodera is red and gets worried, so he puts his hand on her head, which makes her blush even more. He notices how hot she is and freaks out before trying to leave to get some medicine, but she accidentally holds his hand, which makes them both blush. She realizes that this is her moment to confess and she is about to say it, but a ball comes flying in through the window right at the perfect time to interrupt her confession. Raku leaves to call a teacher and asks her what she was about to say, but she brushes it off as nothing. On the way, Raku wonders what she was about to say and laughs at himself for thinking that Onodera might like him. Onodera apologizes to Ruri for not being able to do it, and Ruri warns her not to fail next time, while Onodera thinks about how she likes how things are right now. Later, Chitoge thinks about how the pendant is so important to Raku, so he might still like that girl. Later, Raku is freaking out over losing his pendant when Chitoge appears outside his home with his pendant and leaves quickly as he wonders how he lost it. He sees how the pendant was fixed, and in the car, Chitoge thinks about how she also promised a boy in the past but can't remember him, only his last words, which were Zos and love. Simultaneously, Claude talks to a figure and gives him a mission to save Chitoge from Raku, who he suspects is fooling Chitoge. The figure vows to save Chitoge from the vile person known as Raku. A stranger with a pretty face walks through the school, and as usual, all the girls' panties get twisted in a bunch. At Raku's class, their teacher introduces them to the new transfer student, and the same stranger walks in. She introduces herself as Sugumi, even though everyone thinks she is a guy due to her dressing. Chitoge also notices her just as she runs towards her and envelopes her into a hug. After class, she tells Chitoge that she is supposed to shadow her as per Claude's orders. Meanwhile, Raku still thinks that Sugumi is a guy, and Shu decides not to tell him the truth, even though it's obvious if anyone looks closely. Chitoge introduces Raku to her, and to Raku's surprise, she doesn't seem like that much of a gangster. She tells him that she has been Chitoge's playmate since she was a child, and when Raku accidentally calls Chitoge a gorilla, she becomes sus of their relation, though she doesn't show this. She keeps coddling Chitoge by feeding her lunch and bringing her favorite tea to her, so Chitoge rushes off to the washroom and tells her not to follow her. Sugumi then takes Raku to the school roof and asks whether he really loves Chitoge. She even asks him whether he is willing to die for her, and when he agrees, she takes out a gun and tells him to die. She then calls him spineless and demands to know what his goal is, since he must have bound Chitoge by false love. Raku doesn't say much, while Sugumi keeps yapping forever about how uselessly pathetic he is and about how she can win over Chitoge in no time. She begins to leave, and Raku realizes that he cannot lose Chitoge or else their gangs will start a war with each other, so he calls her out and tells her that he cannot even lose Chitoge to someone like her. Chitoge overhears this tale of embarrassment and rushes between the two to stop them. However, Sugumi doesn't listen to her and instead calls Raku a loser who can never protect her. She reveals that she has promised to protect Chitoge since their promise from 10 years ago, and then challenges him to a duel to decide his fate. She leaves them, and Chitoge tells Raku that Sugumi is actually a hitman who can take out organizations all on her own. She tells him to deal with the situation on his own, which makes him think that Chitoge may have a thing for Sugumi, but she then also tells him to win the duel. He then decides to man up, and after school, they both reach the schoolyard for their duel. The whole school shows up to fangirl over Sugumi, and most of them even place bets on Sugumi's success. The duel begins, and to Raku's surprise, Sugumi rushes at him with a gun. He takes off running, and Sugumi runs after him with her supply of guns and ammunition. She calls him unmanly for running away, and he yells at her that she doesn't know Chitoge well enough if she thinks she is some damsel in distress. He even calls her unmanly, and this pisses her off even more. He then jumps out of the window into the swimming pool, and she jumps after him. She gets knocked out, and Raku then drags her outside. He even drags her to the men's locker room to change her clothes so that she doesn't catch a cold, and just when he unbuttons her shirt, she wakes up and pushes him away. The dunce head finally realizes that Sugumi is actually a girl, while everybody starts gathering outside to look for them. Chitoge barges inside the room but doesn't find them there, even though she feels like she heard their voices. Meanwhile, Raku and Sugumi huddle up inside a locker, where Raku explains to her that they didn't have a choice other than hiding from everyone. Chitoge tells all the girls that Sugumi is actually a girl, and Sugumi begins crying inside the locker. She begins to whine that a low-caliber moron like Raku managed to defeat her, and Raku realizes that she's actually a cute babe from up close. She reveals to him Claude took her in as a kid, but even he still thinks that she is a guy and that she has abandoned being a girl to protect Chitoge. He calls her cute, which frustrates her, but just then, Chitoge opens the locker door and kicks Raku's butt for acting like a creep with Sugumi. Sugumi announces that the duel is invalid since she wasn't defeated, but later she reveals to Chitoge that she was utterly defeated by him. Chitoge then dresses her up in female clothes and asks her about her promise, so she reveals that 10 years ago she promised to protect her at all cost. Chitoge then puts a ribbon on her head, which makes her look cute. Later, Sugumi thinks about how Chitoge may have forgotten about the promise she made to her first love 10 years ago. Later, Sugumi practices her weapon assembling skills when Claude asks her if she's found anything related to Raku, and she recalls the stuff that happened with him, which makes her blush. He orders her to eliminate him when it's confirmed that he isn't Chitoge's real boyfriend. She replies that she will gladly kill someone so disgusting, but remembers how he called her cute, which makes blush again. The next day, she formally introduces herself to everyone, and Onodera is surprised that she is a girl, but Ruri already noticed it. Shu enters being all chummy, and Sugumi warns him, but Chitoge calms her down. The guys are glad that the girls will calm down now that it's been revealed that she is a girl, but their expectations turn out to be false. Raku thinks about how Sugumi was able to fit right in, but Sugumi prevents him from getting even a little close to Chitoge. Later, Raku tells Chitoge that the teacher asked them to get food for the animals, but she tells him to go get it himself. Sugumi pops up and offers to go with Raku while thinking about how she'll figure out if they're really dating or not. Chitoge calls her back for a second and sends her to get the food while wearing girly clothes, and Raku compliments her, which makes her blush. They arrive at the pet shop and Sugumi trips due to her heels, but Raku catches her, which makes her flip out. On the way back, Raku notices that she is in pain and they see that her foot is injured due to the heel, so he scolds her for not saying it earlier. He picks her on his back even though she is against it and tells her to quiet down. Sugumi thinks about how he treats her very good, which makes her blush, and he asks her how long she's been with Chitoge. She reveals how it has been almost 10 years and Chitoge had already found her first love when they first met. Raku is surprised that Chitoge had a crush on someone, and he asks Sugumi about her first love, so she reveals that she never had one, nor will she have one in the future. She says that serving Chitoge is her mission and keeping Chitoge happy is enough for her. He tells her how someone is bound to fall in love with her because of how she is, which makes her fluster up. Later, during practice, she crashes out and Claude asks about Raku and says there is nothing to report yet. Afterwards, Sugumi flusters up every time Raku is nearby or if he touches her, so she asks Chitoge indirectly about how her mood suddenly changes when someone is nearby. She explains that her heart starts beating fast and her face gets hot, but the biggest love expert answers that it must be some kind of disease. She decides to ask Claude about it and he suggests getting it checked by a doctor, so she goes to Shu. He immediately asks if she is talking about Raku and starts laughing at it, so she tries other places but no one gives her a direct answer. She asks Onodera and Ruri, and Onodera replies that Sugumi is in love, which makes her crash out as she refuses to believe it. Ruri says that Onodera is in the same situation, so she must be right, so Sugumi curiously asks who it is, but Onodera stops Ruri from revealing it. Sugumi bashes her head into the wall, refusing to believe it, and Raku asks her what she is doing, so ends up slapping him after getting embarrassed by her own thoughts. Sugumi tells Chitoge about what she was told, and Chitoge says that it seems right. Sugumi brings up Chitoge's first love from 10 years ago, which Chitoge has forgotten about. Chitoge recalls how she made a promise 10 years ago, but can't seem to remember what it was, so she asks Sugumi if she remembers, but she doesn't remember either. After going home, Chitoge tries to find if she has anything from 10 years ago, and she finds a diary dated back to 10 years ago, so she begins reading her entries. All of her entries are about meeting with a boy and how he always used to find her whenever she was about to cry. The last entry talks about a promise, but it doesn't mention what the promise was, which infuriates Chitoge, and a key drops from the book. Chitoge becomes curious about her first love and asks Sugumi to dig for more information on how she met him as a child. The next day, the class begins their trip to go on a camping trip, and due to Shu's scheming, Raku gets bundled up between Onodera and Chitoge. As the bus ride proceeds, Ruri keeps pushing Onodera towards Raku, and they all remain pushed against each other throughout the ride. Once they reach their destination, Chitoge joins the girls' group to help them in their cooking while she keeps wondering about her first love. She accidentally spills hot water on Raku and notices a scar on his forehead which resembles the scar her first love had. Meanwhile, Raku also notices that she's wearing a key. She asks him about his scar, so he explains that he doesn't recall how he got it, but he must have gotten it while playing around with some animals. She realizes that Raku may be her first love since she has a key that may fit his pendant, but this thought frustrates her, so she walks away. They all then visit the room that they are supposed to stay in, and Raku becomes excited to stay in the same room as Onodera, even though they will be separated by a cover. Onodera also invites Chitoge to go to hot springs with her later, and Shu suggests playing a card game since they have time on hand. To spice things up, he suggests that the loser will have to tell the tale of their first love, which surprises everyone since nobody wants to spill the tea. The card game begins, in which Raku is easily able to figure out Onodera's cards judging by her facial expression. Since he finds her very cute, he takes out her bad cards to help her out, while on the other side Chitoge takes out his bad card. Her facial expressions are also easy to read, and soon the game comes down to Chitoge and Raku. Since he feels bad for every chick in the world, he intentionally takes out her bad card, and just when Chitoge takes out one of his cards, their teacher barges in and tells them to move their butts outside. They all eat dinner and start to head towards the hot springs, but just then Raku gets called to the reception to attend a call. Behind his back, Claude switches the sign to the women's side hot springs, and on his way back, Raku accidentally ends up going to the wrong side of the hot springs. He soaks in the water, and just then somebody jumps in the water. Much to his shock, he notices a butt-naked Chitoge, and she also realizes that Claude must have tricked him. She decides to help him escape the den of slippery sin, but suddenly the rest of the girls arrive as well. Somehow Chitoge covers his naked butt and tells him that she plans to help him leave since she can't have people remember him as a peeping creep forever. Since the girls are all bathing beside the entrance, he decides to leave through the service entrance, but just as he gets close to the entrance, their teacher and the rest of the girls barge in to join the hot springs as well. Raku realizes that he will have to stay hidden till everyone is done soaking up. Meanwhile, Shu and the rest of the boys keep eavesdropping on the girls like a bunch of pathetic losers. Suddenly, Tsugumi notices a strange vibe, so she throws a stone at Raku's bucket, which slices it in two. Chitoge then covers him up and he remains behind her, as the other girls engage in some girlish talk and ask Chitoge about her relationship with Raku. She diverts the question to Tsugumi instead, and just then, Raku notices a hole inside the hot springs which may lead to the boy's side. Just as he swims towards it, the girls ask Onodera about her crush, and Onodera rushes towards the hole to avoid the question. Chitoge tries to lure her to her side, and Onodera accidentally ends up bumping Raku too. Chitoge pulls her towards herself again and ends up falling underwater on Raku, accidentally kissing his butt. He somehow gets the final push and swims towards the boy's side successfully. Later, Chitoge scolds him for being a klutz and inquires about how much he saw, but he makes an excuse that he couldn't see much due to the steam. She asks him about what happened at the end, but he refuses to know anything, so she leaves all embarrassed, and he thinks about how he can never admit she kissed his butt. The next day, Raku is still shy, but Chitoge acts normal, so he wonders if he is the only one freaking out, but Chitoge's heart is racing too. Shu tells Raku about how they'll be holding a test of courage later on where boys and girls will be paired up based on lottery tickets, and they'll have to hold hands. He reminds Raku about how it's a good chance to get close to Onodera, but Raku doubts he can get that lucky. Shu offers to sell him the ticket that will pair him up with Onodera if he gets it, and Raku agrees. While on the other side, Ruri tells Onodera to pair up with Raku too somehow, even though it's based on a lottery, and offers to give her the ticket if she draws it. Onodera sees Raku and greets him, but he gets embarrassed after recalling her naked, so he leaves quickly. Nighttime arrives and the test of courage begins as the girls draw the tickets first, and afterwards, the guys start drawing the tickets. Raku wonders what Onodera's number is, and Ruri announces loudly that it's 12 while acting normal. Raku steps up to draw, aiming to get the number 12, and he manages to succeed with all odds against him. Ruri is paired up with Tsugumi, while Chitoge is paired up with Shu, but she scares him away from holding her hand. Onodera goes up to Raku and shows that they have the same number, and he ends up imagining her naked again, so he gets embarrassed. She asks him if he is okay with pairing up with her because he was avoiding her in the morning too. He explains that he was just nervous because they slept in the same room. He gets reeled into her cuteness again, and Chitoge sees him being so happy to be with Onodera. She notices the ghosts in the bushes and questions what happened, so they reveal how one member is short, so she volunteers to help them even though she's scared of the dark. They dress her up and hand her a flashlight for the dark, while Shu wonders where his partner went. They show her where she needs to stay and they leave her alone, so she starts freaking out. She opens her flashlight, but it doesn't work and she ends up breaking it, so she sits on the side. Onodera and Raku hold hands to head out as they both are freaking out on the inside, but Shu informs him that she disappeared a while ago wearing a ghost uniform. Another ghost appears and says that she forgot to put batteries in Chitoge's flashlight, but they talk about how it's not a big deal. Raku thinks about how she must be freaking out in the dark alone, so decides to go look for her himself. Meanwhile, Chitoge is very scared and recalls how something like this also happened when she was small, when she got stuck in a crevice and the boy came to save her. She hears the sound behind her and sees that Raku came to save her, just like how the boy from 10 years ago used to save her. He brings her back while scolding her for choosing to be a ghost, and she tells him to call her by her first name as everyone was discussing about it. Raku finds it a little cute and shyly calls her Chitoge, so she also calls him Raku, which makes them blush up. He ends up losing his chance to pair up with Onodera as the test had already ended when they reached the start, but Onodera says that it's alright. Tsugumi tells Chitoge that they can visit the place where she met her first love, but Chitoge replies that it's not necessary for now. Raku musters up all of his useless courage to strike up a conversation with Onodera, but Chitoge calls him out and asks him a random question. They both chit-chat, and Onodera notices that they are both calling each other by their first names now. Once Chitoge leaves, Tsugumi asks Raku where she is and then shares with them that it's actually Chitoge's birthday that day. She reveals that she is planning a surprise for her and that everyone's invited to her party, which makes Raku realize that he needs to buy a gift for Chitoge now. Ruri suggests that he should go gift shopping with Onodera and that she cannot with him since she is sick. She also tells them to meet up at a cafe in their normal clothes and then hurries off before anyone can object. Once Raku arrives at the cafe, his lonely, pathetic self realizes that meeting up with Onodera like this may seem like a date to any third person. He starts to get nervous, and just then, Onodera also passes by the window. She can check herself out in the window's mirror without realizing that people inside can see her. They both then order coffee and Onodera wonders what Chitoge would like to get for her birthday. Raku wonders when Onodera's birthday is, but he doesn't get a chance to ask her as they start shopping for a gift. Their shopping ends quickly and Onodera asks him whether he had fun since he was forced by Ruri to accompany her. He declares that he had a good time, and she then takes him on a detour to a place from where the whole city is visible. She tells him that it's her secret place and that she hasn't told anyone about it, so it's their secret place now. He promises to keep his secret too, and all of a sudden, she calls him by his first name, which gives him a flashback of his first love from 10 years ago. He thinks it's a bluff since Onodera can't possibly be his first love, while Onodera makes an excuse for calling him by his first name. He then begins to ask her about her birthday, but in nervousness, he ends up asking her whether she is his first love from 10 years ago. To his surprise, she replies that she may be his first love after all, and then explains that 10 years ago, boy she met gave her a key when they said goodbye to each other. She further explains that she doesn't remember the boy but remembers his locket, which resembles Raku's pendant, and that he was so reliable that he was probably her first love too. She then apologizes for lying to him when he asked about the pendant before it, even confesses to him that she was hoping he might be the boy she fell in love with 10 years ago. This gets his virgin heart all doki doki, but before he can reply, Suguna calls him and tells him to move his butt to the party. On the way to the party, Raku keeps wondering whether Onodera is his first love too. They all arrive at Chitoge's grand mansion, and when Chitoge sees them all, she pulls Raku to a side and tells him that she still hasn't shared with anyone that she belongs to a gangster family. Raku then announces to everyone on her behalf about Chitoge's family, and to her surprise, they don't seem to mind this fact since her family background also resembles Raku's family. They then arrive at the venue where all the gangsters give her a surprise and wish her a happy birthday. Even Claude greets all their friends, and noticing Raku, he comments that his gift must be inferior to Chitoge's boyfriend's gift. Onodera then gives Chitoge a stationery set while Ruri gives her a novel. The other gangsters give her some grand obtuse gifts which don't really make sense. Even Claude makes a grand presentation and gives her a customized fancy car, but she rejects it since she doesn't have a license. Raku then gives her a gift which turns out to be a blonde gorilla doll. Seeing this, the gangsters threaten to beat him into a pulp, but surprisingly Chitoge likes this gift and even thanks him for buying it for her. Afterwards, she tells him that his taste in gifts sucks, but she assures him that she will cherish his gift since they are fake dating after all. He finds her a bit cute, but then reminds himself that Onodera may be his first love. Chitoge then asks him whether he still likes his first love, and thinking that it may be Onodera, he admits to her that he still likes her. She then asks him if he has ever heard the phrase "Zos in love." Chitoge explains to Raku that she has recently been reading her childhood diary, which has made her remember a lot of stuff, and that she also made a promise to a boy 10 years ago. She then shows him her key, and Raku tells her that he promised the girl that they would open the pendant once they met. They both get awkward around each other and start arguing once again that there's no way they could like each other. Raku then suggests to try opening the pendant to confirm this, and Chitoge blurts out again that the boy she liked was a very nice and attractive guy unlike him. She then announces that if he does turn out to be the same guy, then she will do whatever he wants, even if it is kissing. Raku then holds out his pendant, and Chitoge leans in to put her key in it, but she keeps getting nervous and stalling the whole process. He then yells at her to get it over it, so she finally puts the key in, but she suddenly twists the key too hard with her gorilla strength and it breaks in two. He starts to panic since he can't try out Onodera's key now, and Chitoge comments that it's not a big deal since it's not like they met 10 years ago. She casually walks away, leaving him behind in distress. Raku keeps going over Onodera and Chitoge's stories when suddenly he comes across Chitoge's dad, who thanks him for coming over. He also thanks him for accompanying her in Japan and comments that he knew they would get along since they used to be friends in childhood too. Seeing Raku's confusion, he tells him that 10 years ago they both met one summer due to their parents meeting and got to know each other well for 1 month, making him think that Chitoge maybe his first love after all. Chitoge's dad drops another bombshell that 10 years ago Raku used to play with Chitoge and Onodera both, and they were all tight besties. This gets Raku thinking since both of them are claiming to have keys to his pendant. However, he only remembers making a promise to that one girl only. He then assures himself that it doesn't matter if Chitoge is his first love, since in the present, he only has eyes for Onodera. The pendant then gets handed over to Shu's uncle, who is a locksmith, and he promises to fix it in some time. Raku shares this news with Chitoge, who takes it very casually to his surprise. When they enter their class, they notice that Claude is surveilling them from outside, so to amp up their fake dating act, Raku puts one hand on Chitoge's shoulder, which frustrates her. She starts acting awkward whenever he mentions or touches her, and he tells her to get a grip. She yells at her to leave her alone, which gets everyone's attention in the class. Afterwards, Onodera asks Raku what's wrong with Chitoge, and he wonders whether Chitoge is worried about him being her first love. Onodera then notices his missing pendant, so he shares that he has sent the pendant for some repair. He then tells her not to worry much about Chitoge, while Onodera wonders whether Raku has feelings for Chitoge or not. The trip's photos get released and her teacher asks them to tell her what photos each student wants. Chitoge fangirls over all the photos like a little child, while Ruri points out a photo to Onodera with Raku's face in it and tells her to buy it. Onodera and Raku then spot a photo with just both of them in it, but they hesitate to buy it since they don't want to oust themselves. Meanwhile, Shu advertises that he has some sneaky photos of girls that the others can guy, and Ruri beats him up for selling embarrassing photos of girls. He also sells Raku a photo of Onodera and Ruri sleeping on the bus, which Raku immediately buys. Raku then notices a photo of Chitoge in which Onodera seems to be changing clothes in the background, so he immediately picks it up to report it to the teacher. He then bumps into Onodera, who immediately notices Chitoge's picture, and he immediately snatches the photo from her to avoid being labeled a good-for-nothing disgusting pervert. Later, Raku thinks about how he can figure out his first love's identity, so he asks his dad whether they have some pictures from the trip 10 years ago. His dad shares that the pictures might be in their storehouse and even hints at a picture which Raku made him take with the girl he made a promise with. Raku searches for the picture the whole night but doesn't find it anywhere. The next morning, Shu invites him out to eat and to study together after school. He mentions Onodera is coming too, which makes Raku immediately accept his invitation like a hopeless simp. After school, the whole group goes out to eat, and Raku keeps wondering about the key and his first love. Even Onodera notices that he is deep in thought, but afterwards when Ruri suggests that she should sit with Raku to get his help in studies, she refuses this offer. She instead suggests that Chitoge should sit with him, which makes Raku think she's acting very distant. They all sit down to study, and Tsugumi reveals that she is a hidden Theta who knows all her study material. She notices that Raku is struggling to study, so she even offers him some advice, which makes him think she's being unusually nice. Shu then asks Chitoge to translate a paragraph into English for their class since she knows the language. She starts translating the conversation into English with very dramatic gestures, which amuses everyone, and Raku even finds Onodera's response very cute. He once again starts thinking about his first love and compares Chitoge and Onodera's personality to his first love. In the midst of all of his thinking, Shu asks him which one does he like the best, so he blurts out that he likes Onodera, but then he stops himself. He covers up his blunder by asking Onodera what drink she likes the best, making Onodera think that maybe he was utterly her name after all. Chitoge continues her dramatic impersonation while Raku keeps thinking about his useless dilemma. Afterwards, he continues his search for the picture and finally finds the box that his dad was talking about. After pondering over it for an eternity, he opens the box only to find a picture with a girl that he has never seen before. He then tries to find his dad to get any clue about the girl, but discovers that his dad has gone out. The next day, the teacher distributes the trip pictures to everyone. Meanwhile, Raku thinks about the identity of the strange girl. He wonders whether Onodera or Chitoge may remember that girl, but in the end, he decides not to ask them since they still don't recall they all used to know each other 10 years ago. After school, it's raining, but Chitoge fails to bring an umbrella, and Raku offers her his own umbrella. She decides to be upstuck about it and refuses his offer, but in the end, she reluctantly accepts it. They both walk home under the same umbrella, and Chitoge notices that she's very dry while Raku is getting wet on one side. She pushes him away and then huddles close to him to stop him from getting wet. This makes him think that she is being very weird, and they both start arguing with each other for the 8,000th time. Suddenly, lightning strikes from the sky, and Chitoge crouches down due to her fear of the thunder. They both then take cover under a shade and decide to stay for a while till the weather clears up. To pass time, they decide to show each other the photos that they have gotten from the trip, and Chitoge takes out dozens of photos from her bag. She goes through his photos and comes across an embarrassing photo of herself in which she is sleeping, so he defends himself that Shu must have pranked him. To his surprise, she doesn't throw a tantrum over this, but instead lets it go and then starts going through the other photos. Raku points out that she seems to fit in with everybody now, and she comments that she doesn't even mind faking dating with him now. Just when he's about to say the same, she tells him that she was just joking, and once again they start arguing. Another lightning strikes loudly, which makes her huddle close to Raku, and things start to heat up, but just then, Raku's dad drives by and spots them both. He throws a bomb at Raku that his fantasy is coming to meet him the next day. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a girl holds a key in her hand and comments that she can't want to meet Raku after 10 years. Raku's dad tells her that once upon a time he promised him to his friend's daughter over some drinks. Even though he does not remember anything, their engagement still stands since their families agreed. After that, Chitoge is upset, and Raku asks her what's wrong since he's felt for a long time that she acts differently. She says that nothing's wrong with her, but she's worried if her people and Claude find out about her engagement with Marika. So she orders Raku to break that engagement with Marika's father. Later, Marika takes Raku to her house and introduces him to her father. Raku almost scares the shit out of him when he sees him. The man is imposing and more frightening than any of and gets even more scared when the old man tells him that the scar on his face was made by Raku's father. Marika tells her father that Raku doesn't remember her, and then he has a girlfriend. The man explodes with anger but calms down when they explain that Raku didn't know anything about their engagement. Also, Marika understands the situation and feels capable of stealing her boyfriend to Chitoge. Then, Marika goes to prepare tea and leaves them alone. Raku is so scared that he is not able to break the engagement, but he manages to tell him that he is in love with another girl. To his surprise, the old man says that he understands but trusts that he will fall in love with Marika. When it is finally time for Raku to leave, he talks to Marika and tells her that her father loves her and treasures her a lot. She says that it is good that they get along because he will soon be her father-in-law. Then, Marika is direct and tells him how he likes women now, so she will change according to his taste, but Raku tells her that it doesn't matter if she has long or short hair or if she speaks with an accent. For him, she's a sweet girl. Marika blushes completely and runs embarrassed and makes her father get Raku out of the house so he doesn't see her like this. Summer vacation has started, and Ruri scolds Onodera because she still hasn't advanced with Rao, but this time, she surprises her because Raku is going to her bakery tomorrow. It turns out that one of the bakers in the family business was unavailable, and she offered Raku a part-time job. The next day, Raku arrives at the bakery and realizes that Onodera's mother is very different from her daughter. She is frightening and has a bad temper. When she sees him, she thinks she is a customer and yells at him. Onodera says that he is the part-time worker that she hired since Raku cooks large amounts of food every day for the Her mother is still not convinced but tests him, and Raku does very well. She approves to Raku to stay in the kitchens and to be her daughter's future husband, although Onodera tells her that she doesn't see him that way. But her mother is intuitive and leaves her daughter alone with him to teach him how to make bean jam paste. Onodera is showing him what to do, and Raku thinks that she is good at making them too. But the last time she made some, the customers fainted, and they had to close the shop for a while, so now she only takes care of the finishing touch, which come out perfect. Later, they start serving customers, and Raku realizes that everyone loves Onodera, and she asks him if he is still going on dates with Chitoge, and Raku pretends that he is, saying that obviously because they are dating. Although Onodera tells him that she already knows that he is not Chitoge's boyfriend, since she confessed it to her a while ago. Onodera is relieved since it now makes sense for him to act like Chitoge's boyfriend when she was around, even though she doesn't know why he kept a picture of Chitoge. Raku thinks that this is his chance to confess his feelings to her, because everything is clear now when it starts to rain and blow very strong wind, and Onodera's mother calls her to say that she won't be back today and that it is too dangerous for Raku to go alone. Raku tries to leave, but there is a typhoon outside, so he decides to stay even though he has nerves to sleep at Onodera's house, and to top it off, she tells him that neither his father nor his little sister are here. She invites him to her room, and later she realizes that she sounded very suggestive, so she tells him that it's just to change clothes and drink tea. As she prepares the tea, Raku can't believe he's in Onodera's room, and when he's about to see a picture of himself on her desk, Onodera interrupts him with the tea. While drinking tea, both are very nervous and don't know what to talk about. So to cut the awkwardness, Raku asks her to see her yearbook from middle school. Raku is proud to find Onodera in all the photos but says that he does not appear. But she says that it is not true and starts pointing to all the photos that he appears in, even the ones that do not look good. Raku is surprised that she watched him so much, but Onodera excuses herself, saying that he was very popular. There was even a girl who liked him, but she won't tell them the name because she doesn't have permission from that girl. Suddenly, Onodera realizes that the rain has stopped. It turns out that the typhoon changed direction, so Raku must go home. He can't believe his bad luck. But before leaving, he asks for her cell phone number, because since they're on summer vacation, they don't know when they'll see each other. And she gives it to him and almost confesses that she is the girl who liked him in middle school. But she regrets it and doesn't tell him. Later, Raku sends her a message, but she thinks that she already tried too hard during the day, so she cuts him off with a simple goodnight. There is a festival in the city, and many yakuza have food stands there, so Raku is helping them a bit, but by chance he meets Chitoge, and the gangsters tell him to enjoy the festival with his girlfriend. Since they have no choice, they walk through the stands, and Chitoge realizes that she can use Raku as a free food coupon at the stands, so now she's happy. The ones who aren't happy at all are Onodera, who hid when she saw them, and Marika, who is angry because Raku refused to go with her to the festival, but apparently he doesn't have a problem with going out with Chitoge. While they walk, some people notice Chitoge's beauty and can't believe she's going out with someone as simple as Raku. She finds it amusing, then she tries to catch little fish with a piece of paper but fails, while Raku does it without problems and gives her two as a gift. Chitoge smiles brightly at him for his gift. Suddenly, they see a large crowd that wants to buy the relationship charm. Raku wants to go buy it, but Chitoge grabs his hand so they don't get separated in the crowd. Both are blushing. Meanwhile, Marika is also going to buy one with the help of her bodyguard. When Raku finally buys one, the crowd moves and drags Chitoge away. He freaks out looking for her and sees a hand thinking it's her and grabs it, but it's Onodera. Raku thinks that the relationship charm is working since he is now with Onodera, but she is worried about Chitoge, so they go looking for her. Meanwhile, Chitoge is angry at Raku for letting go her hand and then looks around her. Almost everyone is wearing yukata. Still in the crowd, Raku and Onodera want to start looking for Chitoge, but her sandal breaks and Raku carries her on his back to take her to a place with few people. Then he fixes her sandal, but the relationship charm falls off and a cat takes it away. Raku begins to chase the cat, and on his way he runs into Marika, who thinks that he will give her a kiss. Then he runs into Subu, who tells where the cat went. Then he runs into Shu, who grabs the amulet, but Ruri doesn't even pay attention to him. Instead, she kicks it, and the relationship charm flies and lands at Chitoge's feet, who catches it. After that, she finds Raku and gives it to him, but he is speechless because she's wearing a yukata and tells her that she looks good. They continue walking and Chitoge stops to read a sign that explains that the relationship charm is for asking for marriage. If a man gives it to a woman, it means it's a proposal. While Raku is still in his thoughts, he decides to get rid of the relationship charm and throws it at Chitoge as a gift. She turns red because she thinks he is proposing to her, and the more questions she asks, her confusion grows. Suddenly, her sash loosens and she's about to be naked, so Raku goes to help her and reads the sign about the relationship charm and drops her sash, saying he didn't know what it was for. Chitoge is nearly stripped and yells at a shocked Raku. Meanwhile, at the festival, the three girls are happy to have seen Raku, especially Marika, who still thinks that he wanted to kiss her. Summer continues, and one weekend, Raku and his friends go to the beach since Shu got an inn at a good price. The girls are excited since they haven't been on the beach for a long time. At the beach, all the girls look beautiful in a bikini, especially Sugumi, and the girls take the opportunity to play with her big breasts, and Shu does not stop admiring them. Then Marika wants Raku to put sunscreen on her back, but Chitoge defends her fake boyfriend from Marika's flirtations, though she gets annoyed with him and hits him. Later, she goes to look for something in her suitcase and finds the relationship charm that Raku gave her and thinks what would have happened if he really asked her to marry him. But she quickly laughs because that won't happen. At lunchtime, Raku and Chitoge are drawn to prepare the cookout. She helps him, however, she can but feels embarrassed every time their hands touch each other, and because she is distracted, she cuts her finger and Raku heals her. After eating, Raku is alone on the beach and Onodera comes over to spend time with him. He says that he never thought they would be on the silver together and wonders how she has fun if she can't swim. Then Onodera shows him a perfect castle of sand that she made. Onodera has a lot of thoughts in her head and accidentally asks Raku if she can kiss him. Chitoge, who is approaching them, is paralyzed, unable to believe what she hears. Onodera can't believe what she said out loud either, but luckily Raku had fallen asleep and doesn't listen to her, so she runs away. So Chitoge thinks that maybe Onodera was referring to some food. The next day, Chitoge is distracted since she can't stop thinking about Raku, so Onodera approaches her to see what's wrong with her. Then they start talking and Chitoge tells her what's happening to her, but with the excuse that it's happening to a friend, so Onodera thinks she's talking about Sugumi's, so she says that she has a crush on someone. Chitoge refuses to accept that she likes Raku and doesn't stop thinking about it all afternoon. At night, everyone plays with handheld fireworks except Chitoge, who is away from the rest in another place on the beach, so Reika goes looking for her and asks her what's wrong. She gets serious and asks him if he thinks they would work as a couple. Raku turns red and thinks she's joking and starts telling her all her flaws, stressing that she's not a girly girl. Chitoge feels hurt by his words and yells at him. Reika is surprised, but she apologizes and runs away. After that, Raku and Chitoge didn't speak to each other for the rest of the summer. A new school semester begins and Onodera notices that Reika is feeling down and wonders if it's because of Chitoge. Meanwhile, Raku waits for Chitoge to arrive and see her, and when she enters the classroom, he tells her that it was cold of her to ignore him all summer, and she apologizes again. Raku doesn't understand why Chitoge is different now. Suddenly, Shu tells his classmates that the cultural festival is coming up and their class is going to do the Romeo and Juliet play, and he wants the couple in the class to be the leads. But Chitoge says that she won't. After the character draw for the play, Raku and Onodera are chosen to be Romeo and Juliet. Although Marika does switch places with Onodera, but the shy girl says that she wants to be the main character. Marika suspects what Onodera is feeling, so she says that she will be Juliet's understudy if Onodera doesn't show up on the big day. At the end of classes, Chitoge goes home alone, but is chased by Raku, who tells her that they should go together because they are supposedly a couple, but she says that if one day they don't pretend, nothing will happen. Raku gets angry and asks her what's wrong, but she continues with a blank face and says that they are a fake couple and they don't have to talk about what's wrong with them. Then she goes home, leaving Raku sad because he is really worried about her. Raku feels uneasy and Onodera thinks it's because of Chitoge and doubts about the false couple since even he kept a photo of her. But later, she sees that photo and realizes that besides Chitoge, she was changing clothes in the back. So she realizes that Raku was protecting her when he saved Chitoge's photo. It's time to rehearse the play, so Raku intends to forget Chitoge for a while and focus on Onodera, but she is nervous and forgets her lines. Meanwhile, Chitoge watches them from afar with the script of the play in hand. The rehearsals continue and Marika does not stop meddling when it is Onodera's turn to say his lines, and not only that, but he goes out of character and adapts it to his relationship with Raku. Sugumi feels offended on behalf of her friend and yells at Marika that Raku has a girlfriend, but that doesn't matter to Marika because Chitoge is not Juliet. This causes Raku to look at Chitoge through the window, and he mentally kicks himself for thinking of her again and freaks out when he realizes that Claude is spying on him through the window. Then the sewing club finishes the outfits and it's Raku and Onodera's turn to try them on. When Onodera shows him her dress, Raku is amazed at how it looks on her, but quickly figures that Chitoge would also look pretty. Just then, he sees Chitoge and her friends go by in the hallway and hides to see her, but he mentally kicks himself again for hiding since he doesn't understand why he does it. The next day, Claude becomes increasingly suspicious of them, so Raku asks Chitoge to be with him today, but she says that she doesn't want to be his fake girlfriend anymore and does not care about their families anymore, and that the whole fake couple affair is over. They are just two strangers. Raku is disappointed with her words because he believed that they were beginning to have a real connection between them, and he is upset to hear that for Chitoge everything was faked, so he agrees with her and accepts that they are complete strangers. He even says that surely her father was confused since it is impossible that they have been friends 10 years ago, so Chitoge slaps him and then leaves. The whole school is shocked. Raku feels bad and goes up for air leaving the rehearsals, and Chitoge throws a tantrum because of everything she said to Raku. It's the day of the culture festival. Raku and Onodera already have their costumes on, but a girl almost has an accident and Onodera runs to help her but sprains her ankle and is now unable to do the play. To make matters worse, Marika has the flu, so she is not present. Everyone is worried without knowing what to do, and Onodera feels bad because maybe the play will be canceled because of her. The teacher says that she will come up with a plan, and Raku runs off because he has an idea. Meanwhile, Chitoge can't stop thinking about Raku and how their relationship is. But suddenly, Raku arrives and begs her to replace Onodera in the play. He tells her that only with her could he improvise in the play. Chitoge tells him that she thinks he hates her because of what he said to her on the beach. Then Raku realizes that he accidentally hurt her, so he explains better and says that even if they don't get along and always are fighting, he doesn't hate her. After hearing this, Chitoge is relieved and agrees to be Juliet. It's time for the play. Chitoge puts on Juliet's dress, and Raku is speechless and blushing when he sees how beautiful she is. Chitoge and Raku go on stage, and their families are present in the audience. The play starts normally. Chitoge recites her first lines perfectly, but they quickly forgets them because she doesn't know the script. They have to improvise a lot of the dialogues, but it works since all viewers find it funny. Since they already made changes, Shu begins to modify the original script and reveals that Sugumi's character always loved Romeo, so she almost ends up confessing to Raku thanks to the pressure of the show, but she couldn't do it, so they force her off the stage so she doesn't shoot anyone. After that, Marika goes on stage and introduces herself as Romeo's true love, so everyone starts to hate the protagonist for being unfaithful. Then Romeo tries to justify himself by saying that she was confused, but Marika takes advantage of this to try and make it even worse and reveals that Romeo proposed to her. Raku takes advantage of the fact that things are being made up and says that Romeo can't get married because they are siblings, putting her in a very embarrassing situation. Then Marika turns redder and faints when she hears that the protagonist does everything to protect her. After this, when Raku believes that everything is over, Claude appears on stage as Juliet's brother and tries to prevent the two from getting together since he does not believe that Romeo is worthy of her love, so he tries to kill him. Romeo runs for his life, but he doesn't plan to die without a fight, so he throws several bricks at him. No one hit him, but this destabilized, and that his daughter grew up thinking he was her fiancé. He then asks him to hang out with her once she arrives and even reveals that she is the same girl from the picture. The next day, their class gets a new transfer student and a prim babe called Tachibana walks in. The boys go crazy over her, however, she runs towards Raku and hugs him. She then announces to the class that she is his fantasy, which even surprises him. Sugumi argues with her that Chitoge is his girlfriend now and to put up with the act. Chitoge also pulls Raku to her side, but Tachibana taunts her that she can make Raku more happy than her. Sugumi points a gun at her and suddenly groups of policemen barge inside the class to protect her. She reveals that her father is the police commissioner, so they cannot threaten her this way. When the policeman leaves, she falls down and asks Raku to escort her to the infirmary since she is very frail. She then drags him to the infirmary and asks him to set a date for their wedding. After this Oscar-worthy performance, Raku comes out clean to her that he didn't know he had a fiancée till the night ago and that he doesn't even remember her. She then declares that she has loved him for 10 years, and when he asks her whether he remembers their promise, she tells him that she remembers everything. She then starts coming onto him like a cat in heat and tries to get away from her advances. Chitoge and the gang discover them both in an intimate position, and Chitoge then punches him to oblivion for being such a pervert. Afterwards, Tachibana tells her guard Honda that she will jog Raku's memory one way or another and marry him. The next day, Chitoge thinks that maybe she will apologize to Raku for punching him so hard, but when she arrives at class, she discovers Tachibana clinging to Raku. She keeps a distance from them while Raku tries to explain to Tachibana that her behavior is causing a lot of problems for her. She then asks him to go on a date with her the next day and even threatens to tell her father if he refuses, so he reluctantly accepts to hang out with her. When he arrives at Tachibana's, she tells him that her father is a very kind man. However, when he meets him, he realizes that he is actually even more intimidating than a yakuza. Her dad then tells him that his dad gave him a scar on his eye, which still makes him want to throw him behind the bars. Tachibana then tells him all the tea on Raku about how he forgot about her and how he has a girlfriend now, which makes her dad furious. But she calms him down by telling him that she now plans to steal Raku from his girlfriend. She follows this by dropping a bomb on his head that they have also shared a kiss, which makes Raku feel like he's going to be sent to the next world. She then hurries away to prepare tea for him, leaving him behind with her scary dad, and her dad takes this opportunity to share with Raku about how Tachibana has been pathetically simping over him for ages. Raku comes out clean to him that he cannot make any commitment since he likes someone very much, and he tells him not to fret it since his feelings may change over time. Afterwards, Tachibana asks Raku again what kind of girl he prefers, and he tells her that he finds her cute just the way she is, so she doesn't have to change her hairstyle or her way of talking. This catches her off guard and she runs away in embarrassment. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Chitoge sulks about the whole situation. It's the summer vacation and Ruri scolds Onodera for not making any progress with Raku. She tells him to make a move on him, and Onodera reveals shyly that Raku is actually coming over to her house the next day. A few days ago at the end of the semester, Onodera asks Raku whether he's free on the weekend for a part-time job and then explains that her family needs a part-time cook, due to which she's inviting him. Not wasting any opportunity to get into her pants, Raku immediately accepts the offer and then arrives at her place only to find her mom yelling at a vendor over the phone. When she spots Raku, she tells him to go suck a lollipop, but Onodera intervenes just in time and introduces him as their part-time cook. She gets angry to hear this since she was expecting some hotshot professional when Onodera stands up for him and tells her about Raku's great cooking skills. She reluctantly agrees, and to test him out, she asks him to make a sweet to check his skills. Even though he doesn't have expertise in desserts making, he makes up something and feeds it to Onodera's mom, which gets him her approval. He even asks him to marry into the family and compliments Onodera for bringing such fine meat to meet her. She suggests to Onodera that Raku can also become their heir, and after teasing them endlessly, she leaves Onodera in charge of teaching Raku how to make some basic desserts. Onodera then teaches Raku how to make some sweets and reveals to him that she's not good at cooking herself, but she is very good at doing the finishing touches. She tells him that they can both coordinate together to make something great, and this seems like a marriage proposal in Raku's mind. An old geezer comes to the shop to buy something and starts shamelessly flirting with Onodera, so Raku hurriedly deals with him and gives him his change. Onodera then asks him whether he still goes on dates with Chitoge, and also tells him that she knows they are fake dating. Raku realizes that he can freely confess his feelings to Onodera now despite having no balls to do so, while Onodera thinks about how Raku wasn't aware that she knew about their fake dating. Soon the weather starts to take a turn for the worse, and a typhoon starts nearing their area. Onodera's mom then calls the shop to tell them that she can't make it back due to the typhoon, and even tells Raku to stay for the night since he can't possibly go back in this weather. Raku starts to freak out on hearing this and becomes even more nervous when he learns that nobody's home since her dad and sister are also out. He attempts to leave in the storm, but after failing miserably, he decides to stay at her house. Meanwhile, Onodera cannot wipe the grin off her face since she feels like she has hit the jackpot. She asks Raku what he wants for dinner, and Raku notices that she is grinning like a psycho. To maintain her composure, she tries to change the topic, and in nervousness, she ends up asking him whether he wants to come up to her room. When he agrees, she rushes away to her room to tidy it up and takes forever to change her clothes too. She also hides a picture of Raku that she has in the room and then invites him inside. Once he comes in, she runs away to make him tea. Meanwhile, Raku slowly loses his mind as he takes in his crush's room. He then notices the picture that Onodera has hidden and even tries to take a peek at it, but before he can take a look, Onodera enters the room with tea, and he flies back to his seat instantly. They both drink tea and sit awkwardly with each other in silence. To get rid of the boredom, Reiko suggests looking at their middle school pictures since they both used to go to the same school, and they both look at the album which shows their past selves. Raku keeps noticing Onodera in all the pictures, while Onodera points him out in all pictures no matter how tiny he is. She comments that he used to stand out a lot and confesses that she even knew one girl who used to have a crush on him. She doesn't reveal the girl's identity, and soon the weather turns better, so Raku gets ready to leave. As he exits her house, he finally gets the guts to ask her email address, and they both exchange their mail with each other. She thinks of texting him that it was actually her who used to like him in middle school, but then decides against it. Later, Raku sends her a text and she texts him goodnight. Another day, Raku helps out his gang members in a festival and takes some food to give to other members too. He only hopes to get a charm that promises to excel people's romantic relationships, but on the way he comes across Chitoge, who has come to enjoy the festival. One of the gang members spots them and tells Raku not to worry about the stands, as he should be spending quality time with his girlfriend instead. Raku then feeds her octopus balls from his gang stall, and when she realizes that he can get all the food for free from the gang stalls, she becomes excited to spend more time with him. Meanwhile, Onodera also spots the two of them hanging out together, but she hides from them in nervousness. She wishes to buy the relationship charm too, and Tachibana, who is at the festival, spots her. Tachibana also spots Raku and Chitoge hanging out together, and she recalls how Raku rejected her when she proposed to go out with them. Raku also thinks about how much time he usually spends with Chitoge, since they have started fake dating each other. The people around him keep talking about Chitoge's look, and some even loudly wonder why she is even going out with a pathetic loser like Raku. At the same time, Tachibana and Onodera keep stalking the couple while Raku and Chitoge play festival games. Raku helps Chitoge capture fish so his gang members test his abilities by putting a fat obese fish in the tub. He manages to capture it too, and then at the end gifts two small fish to Chitoge as a gift, since man has no game. Chitoge then notices a crowd in the festival, which reminds Raku that he wants to buy the relationship charm from the sale. Tachibana dives with full force into the crowd to buy the relationship charm, and Onodera also convinces herself to buy the charm for her and Raku's love. Raku also begins to move towards the crowd, and Chitoge grabs his hand so that they don't get separated in the rush. This makes him feel conscious because he is 12 years old going through puberty, but he finally manages to make his way through the crowd to buy the charm. Just as he buys the charm, he ends up losing Chitoge in the crowd, and when he sees someone's hand sticking out, he pulls at it thinking it's Chitoge. He ends up pulling out Onodera instead, and she notices that he has bought the relationship charm. She tells him that she got swept in the crowd, while he thinks that he got paired up with Onodera due to the charm's work. His charm drops, and when Onodera bends to pick it up, her sandals end up snapping, so Raku picks her up. He carries her away from the crowd and fixes her sandals so that she can walk. Suddenly, a cat snatches away his charm, so he runs after it, leaving Onodera behind alone. Tachibana stands in a bum thinking about how she couldn't secure a relationship charm, but just then, Raku runs towards her with full speed. He instructs her not to move, and she starts teasing him about leaving Chitoge, but when she sees him getting close to her, she starts getting nervous. Raku moves even closer to her, and then jumps behind her to grab the cat sitting behind her, but the cat runs away. He runs behind the cat, leaving Tachibana behind embarrassed. The cat then runs towards Sugumi, who is also fretting over not being able to buy a relationship charm, even though she doesn't like anyone. Raku also runs towards her, and she points Raku in the cat's direction, so he rushes after it. The cat runs through the crowd and ends up dropping the charm on Shu's head, who is also ranting about not being able to buy the charm. He thinks it's good luck, so he approaches the next girl to ask her out, but the next girl turns out to be Ruri. Ruri then kicks him hard, which sends the charm flying in the air. Chitoge finds the charm and gives it to Raku, who is still searching for it. He notices that she's wearing a pretty yukata, and she comments that she was curious about wearing a yukata, so she asks Claude to bring her one. He compliments her looks, and as they walk towards the festival, Chitoge reads on a board that the relationship charm is given to a girl when a boy wants to propose. Just then, Raku thinks that he doesn't really the charm, so he hands it over to Chitoge, which makes her think that he is proposing. She starts to get really flustered, and their misunderstanding keeps increasing as she keeps thinking that Raku likes her now. Suddenly, her yukata's sash loosens up, causing a dressing mishap, and Raku helps her tie the sash closely to her. He ends up reading the charm's quality on the board too, and realizing his mistake, he immediately tells Chitoge that he didn't know what the charm meant. A few days later, they all head to the beach to enjoy their summer vacations, and the girls reveal their swimsuits one by one, with Ruri still wearing the plain old one. Sugumi is embarrassed by her revealing swimsuit that was chosen by Chitoge, and Tachibana begins teasing her. Shu looks around the beach using his binoculars, and Ruri beats him away. Tachibana calls Raku to rub sunscreen on her, but Chitoge volunteers to do it, but Tachibana rejects her help. Chitoge punches Raku away for grinning at the thought of rubbing sunscreen on Tachibana, and she wonders why she gets so annoyed. She finds the relationship charm in her stuff and wonders what she would have done if it really was a proposal, but she tries to laugh it off, only to think again why she didn't say no immediately. They all randomly pick who will be on dinner duty for the barbecue, and the couple is chosen. They get the stuff for the dinner, and Raku peels the potatoes while Chitoge cuts them, but their hands accidentally, which causes her to freak out. She wonders why she is getting so flustered on such a small thing, and she ends up cutting herself, so he puts a bandage on it while she continues to blush. They all eat the barbecue, and later, Raku is watching the sea view alone when Onodera joins him. They talk about how they never imagined that they will be visiting a beach together, and Chitoge decides to call them over. She rushes over, and just then, Onodera mistakenly says her thoughts about wanting to kiss Raku, which Chitoge also overhears. Onodera gets shocked over what she just said and starts freaking out. She reluctantly looks at Raku, who didn't hear it because he fell asleep. She runs away out of embarrassment, and Chitoge tells herself how Onodera can never say such a thing, so she wonders what Onodera really said. The next day, Chitoge is still deep in thought about why she can't talk normally to Raku, and Onodera questions why she seems so down. Chitoge tells Onodera her own situation by pretending that she is asking about a friend whose heart races whenever they're around a certain person. Onodera directly answers that the girl has a crush on that person, which makes Chitoge fluster up. Onodera questions if they all used to play around like this 10 years ago too, and after a while, Chitoge feels great thanks to Onodera's help. She thinks about how Onodera said that she has a crush on Raku, and she refuses to believe it but questions why her heart is beating so fast. Later, Chitoge likes sparklers alone because she gets nervous around Raku, but he manages to find her and asks her what's wrong. She reminds him that they're just a fake couple and he doesn't even like her. He replies that he doesn't dislike her as much as before, and he asks her if she still hates him. She says that she still hates him a lot, but asks whether they would have worked out if they actually dated. They both get flustered at the mood, and Raku wonders why he's getting so nervous around her, even finding her pretty. He nervously responds that she is not his type and starts roasting her, before saying that it would have never worked out, which makes her angry. She shouts at him to shut up and gets flustered. She apologizes in a low voice and runs away. They don't talk until the summer break ends, and at the start of next semester, Raku wonders why Chitoge has been ignoring him ever since what happened on the beach. Chitoge enters the class, and Raku tries to talk to her, but she responds very dryly. Shu announces to everyone that their class will be performing a play for the cultural festival, and the play that they'll be performing is the Romeo-Juliet play. He nominates the famous class couple to be Romeo and Juliet, but Chitoge refuses to participate in the play. Onodera is chosen to play Juliet after Chitoge's refusal to play, but Tachibana tries to convince Onodera to let her play Juliet instead. Onodera holds her ground this time and says that she wants to play the main character herself. Tachibana notices what's happening and decides to act as a stand-in if Onodera has a problem playing on the actual day. Raku cries tears of joy because he gets to play Romeo-Juliet with Onodera, but is still confused about what's happening with Chitoge. She leaves as soon as classes end, so Raku follows after her and asks her what's wrong. She continues to give dry responses, so he requests her to tell him if he did something wrong. She reminds him that they're just a fake couple, so she doesn't need to have chats with him even in private, and she tells him not to act too familiar with her. This hurts Raku's feelings, and they both start walking separate ways. Onodera sees Raku on the way back and tells him about how the rehearsals are about to start. She notices how his mood is off and sees Chitoge walking away, which makes her wonder if they're still fighting. She recalls the photo of Chitoge and thinks about what Raku really feels for Chitoge. She sees the same photo in the teacher's drawer, who tells her that Raku brought it to her because it had Onodera in her underwear. The rehearsals begin, and Onodera is having a hard time handling the pressure, while nearby Chitoge calls Raku dumb while holding the script for the play. Raku throws down his best acting, but Tachibana keeps on interrupting them without even a speck of shame. Sumhyubi tells her to back off, but Tachibana says that it doesn't matter anymore because Chitoge refused to become Juliet. Raku notices Chitoge from the window and tells himself how he must focus on the rehearsals, but he sees Claude glaring at him. Shu announces the end of rehearsals for the day and tells the main characters to try on their costumes. Raku comes out looking like a proper prince, and Onodera comes out looking so adorable that Raku is left in awe. He wonders how Chitoge would look in that costume, but tries to distract himself and even ends up hiding from Chitoge. The next day, Claude appears before Raku with a knife, so Raku tries to talk to Chitoge about Claude, but she says that she cannot pretend anymore. He reminds her of how many people will be affected if they stop pretending, but she replies that she doesn't want to have anything to do with him. She starts going off on him about how would never play Juliet or be his fake girlfriend. Raku is shocked that the whole time he felt a connection with her, but she just considers him a stranger. He gets angry and tells her how he also considers her a stranger and how they were never close to begin with, and all their memories together are fake. He says that there is no way that she is the girl he made the promise with 10 years ago, and how they don't have any obligation to act fake because of other people. He gets slapped by Chitoge out of nowhere that rings through the whole corridor, and she leaves after that. Raku walks away while feeling hurt about getting slapped on the face. Meanwhile, Chitoge hits the wall out of frustration. The day of the cultural festival arrives and Raku and Onodera are all dressed up to perform. Onodera looks at the large audience and starts getting nervous, but she motivates herself. She walks through the backstage when a girl falls from the ladder and she tries to catch her. Her ankle gets sprained and the teacher tells her that she can't perform anymore, so they should call Takebana, but turns out she is also sick at home. They all wonder what they should do now, and Onodera feels guilty about how they might cancel the play, which will wash everyone's efforts down the drain. Raku states that he won't let the play get cancelled, and he rushes off. Back at Chitoge, who wonders why she is acting out so much and recalls the things Raku said on the beach. Raku appears out of nowhere and asks to play Juliet in Onodera's place before dragging her away. He explains how Onodera got injured and how he feels like they can somehow make it work if it's Chitoge. She brings up the things he said on the beach and says that they can't make anything work out. Raku realizes that she has been mad about what he said at that time, so he apologizes for what he said at that time and says that he doesn't hate her. She becomes happy again after hearing how he doesn't hate her and tells him to keep up with her during the play. Worried that walking with a cat on the streets would be too conspicuous, so Tsugumi transforms into a human and Chitoge becomes angrier since her costume is cute. All the magical girls meet and Ruri summons them to cooperate and end the evil that has accumulated in the city. But first they have to choose a leader, although they cannot agree, so they decide by rock, paper, or scissors, and Onodera wins. Ruri warns her that now she will have a more leading role, and that she will always be the one that ends up standing in addition to other simple paperwork things. But it turns out to be an endless amount of work, so Chitoge and Marika are glad that they were not chosen as leader. After that, their first fight is against a giant monster which they cannot defeat in any way, so Ruri recommends that they join their powers in a final attack. But to do this, they will have to be for 5 minutes, since they will use up the power of their clothes. Onodera and Chitoge try to refuse, but since there are no other options, they are forced to. Meanwhile, Ruri, with her perfect defensive and offensive powers, distracts the monster, although Onodera gets the impression that they weren't even necessary. They end up defeating the monster, but Shu appears, who is the doctor who created these monsters and spread them out of the world. Onodera wants to know why he wants to dominate the world, but this doesn't really matter to him, since his only interest is to see magical girls and with their pretty costumes. Onodera decides to stop him since he is an enemy of women, but he has lightning that strips magical girls naked and his first victim is Chitoge, so Marika tries to attack him, but has the same luck, so Ruri advises them to deactivate their costumes. Onodera is worried because she doesn't know what they will do to defeat him, but Ruri has the wonderful idea of lifting Onodera's skirt, so Shu falls to seize her and Ruri sends him flying with a punch. Back to reality, Onodera's mother needs 2 workers, so Haru offers to help her, but they still need someone else, so she asks Onodera to call Raku. Later, he arrives and Haru is upset to see him, so the atmosphere becomes very tense and Onodera would like that Raku to get along better with Haru, but her mother notices it and teases Onodera by telling her that now she has competition. They start working, but Haru is super alert, so there is no contact between the two, so Onodera decides to go on an assignment to leave them alone and they can fix their problems, but Raku gets sad because she left. Then, Haru laughs since now he will not be able to fulfill his goal, and she cannot believe that he has the courage to see her after what he did to her. Instead of looking away, he stared at her and even told her that she should not use bears. So Haru is determined not to let her wonderful sister be with pathetic Raku. Raku agrees that Onodera is wonderful and begins to list more qualities of her, but Haru gets annoyed and punches him for complimenting her sister too much. Then Raku realizes that she also loves Onodera, although in a different way from him. Then he tries to make peace by telling her that he was the one who rescued her from the bad boys, but Haru had idealized the image of her prince to the point that it is impossible for her to believe that he is Raku. If you like what you saw, consider subscribing to the channel and stay tuned for more quality uploads.